You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium, available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean, and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the Stalker, so it's over to you now, Mark.
According to Wikipedia, stalking is an unwanted and/or a repeated surveillance or contact by an individual or group toward another person. Stalking behaviours are interrelated to harassment and intimidation and may include either following the victim in person or even monitoring them online. In psychiatry and psychology, the word stalking itself is used with some differing definitions. However, in some legal jurisdictions, the term is used as a criminal offence. The phrase stalker was initially used by the media and the tabloid press in the 20th century to describe people who pester and harass others, initially with the specific reference to the harassment of celebrities by strangers who were described as being obsessed. But now, with the passing of time, the meaning of the word stalker has changed and now incorporates individuals who are being harassed by their former partners or even a complete stranger. Unlike other crimes, which usually involves one act, stalking can be defined as a series of actions that occur over a prolonged period of time to one victim. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this Checking You Out episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a psychic medium, a ufologist and a true crime buff. And just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every Monday night I do a podcast on the various subjects under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, and missing people. So if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the dark story surrounding the Stalker. And this week's necessary disclaimer: this story is a tale that involves the crimes of harassment, coercive control and, as the title of the show already gives it away, stalking, so may prove upsetting to some. Listener discretion is advised. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. Although my English is my first and only language, it looks better than it tastes. So, let's get back to tonight's episode. In 1995, a research paper called Stalking Strangers and Lovers was among the first to use the term stalking to describe the common occurrences of males after a breakup and someone who aggressively pursues their former female partners. Other terms that were used prior to the research paper were phrases like female harassment, obsessive following, or psychological rape, with the term stalker having been used since at least the 16th century, referring to a prowler or a poacher. And as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, the term stalker was initially used by the US tabloid press media in the 20th century to describe people who pester and harass others, like celebrities by strangers, who were thought of being as obsessed. And with time, the meaning of the word stalker changed and incorporated individuals who are or were being harassed by their former partners. Stalking can be defined as the willful and the repeated following, watching or harassing of another person. Paul Mullen and Michelle Pathay, who are the authors of the book Stalkers and Their Victims, and who have established themselves as world authorities on the subject, describe stalking as, and I quote,
a constellation of behaviours in which an individual inflicts upon another repeated, unwanted intrusions and communications.
And although stalking is illegal in most areas of the world, some of the actions that contribute to stalking may, in fact, be legal. For example, gathering information, calling someone on the phone, texting, sending gifts, emailing, or even instant messaging. These actions only become illegal when they breach the legal definition of harassment. In other words, the action of sending a text message is not usually illegal. However, it becomes illegal when the text message becomes frequent and repeatedly to an unwilling recipient. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Good. Because cultural norms and meaning affect the way stalking is defined. For example, in the United Kingdom, the law states that the incident, whatever that may be, only has to happen twice, when the harasser should be aware that their behaviour is unacceptable. For example, making 2 phone calls to a stranger, sending or giving 2 gifts, or the act of following the victim and then phoning them up. It has been noted by scholars that a majority of men and women who have admitted to engaging in various stalking-like behaviours following a breakup. However, such behaviours over time have stopped, suggesting that, and I quote,
engagement in low levels of unwanted pursuit behaviours for a relatively short amount of time, particularly in the context of a relationship breakup, may be normative for heterosexual dating relationships occurring within the US culture.
The disruptions in the daily life for some victims make it necessary for them to escape their stalker by taking drastic measures. These measures can include things like changing their phone numbers, changing their employment, or even a change of residence. This in turn can take a toll on the victim's well-being and mental health, which may lead to a sense of isolation. According to the Dutch author Lambert Royakkers, who wrote the book called The Dutch Approach to Stalking, he said, and I quote, stalking is a form of mental assault in which the perpetrator repeatedly, unwantedly and disruptively breaks into the life world of the victim, with whom they have no relationship or no longer have in the case of a former partners. Moreover, the separated acts that make up the intrusion cannot by themselves cause the mental abuse, but taken together cause a cumulative effect. After this first short break, in part 2, we will look at the different types of stalkers that are out there and their psychology and behaviours.
This show is brought to you courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times, and over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could,
and has taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective offers. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android, for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
Thanks for listening to Mark's Unexplained World. If you are interested in parapsychology, quantum sciences, and true encounters with the other side, you may wish to visit The Weird Walk Home. That's my show on YouTube. Also, stay tuned, because After Dark with Tilly and Mark is creeping your way in June. Additionally, if you are interested in weird sciences, you may like to purchase my brand new book on Amazon. That would be Weird Time by Tim R. Swartz. It features lots of strange explanations and encounters with time from myself and other notable names like Lon Strickler and more. Thanks for listening.
Psychologists, in general, often group stalkers into two different categories. These are the psychotic and the non-psychotic stalkers. It has been noted that some stalkers may already have a pre-existing psychotic disorder, such as a delusional disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or full-blown schizophrenia. On an interesting side note, a schizoaffective disorder is a mental disorder characterised by an abnormal thought process and an unstable mood. This diagnosis requires symptoms of both schizophrenia and a mood disorder, either bipolar or depression. Schizoaffective disorder can often be misdiagnosed when the correct diagnosis may be psychotic depression, bipolar, a schizophreniform disorder, or even schizophrenia. Many people with schizoaffective disorder have other mental disorders which include anxiety. Common symptoms of schizoaffective disorder include hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized speech and thinking. Auditory hallucinations or hearing voices are also a most common symptom, with the onset of symptoms usually beginning in the ages of adolescence or young adulthood. Most stalkers, you will be pleased to know, are classed as non-psychotic, so may just exhibit disorders or a neurosis such as a major depression, adjustment disorder, as well as a variety of other personality disorders, for example antisocial, borderline or narcissistic behaviour. The non-psychotic stalker's pursuit of victims is primarily motivated by anger, with a vindictive focus often including a projection of blame, obsession, dependency, minimization, denial, and even jealousy, with only 10% of stalkers having an erotomanic delusional disorder. Erotomania, also known as the Clermont syndrome, is a relatively uncommon paranoid condition that is characterized by an individual's delusions of another person being infatuated with them. Commonly, the onset of erotomania is sudden and the course is chronic. Erotomania is most often seen, although not exclusively, in female patients who are terribly shy, dependent on others, and most of all, sexually inexperienced. The object of their delusion is typically a male who is unobtainable due to having a high social or financial status, or even married. The object of The object of obsession may also be imaginary, deceased, or someone the patient has never even met. Delusions of reference are common, as the do that one again. Delusions of reference are common, as the erotomanic individual often perceives that they are being sent messages from the secret admirer through innocuous events, such as seeing a license plate from a specific region. I got there in the end. A paper by the author Poolar called A Study of Stalkers in the year 2000 was able to identify 5 types of stalkers, which include:
Number 1, the rejected stalker.
The rejected stalker follows their victims in order to reverse, correct, or even avenge a rejection, like, for example, a divorce, a separation, or termination of a relationship.
Number 2, the resentful stalker.
The resentful stalker makes a vendetta because of a sense of grievance against their victim, motivated mainly by the desire to frighten and distress them.
Number 3, the intimacy seeker.
This type of stalker seeks to establish an intimate, loving relationship with their victim. Such stalkers form a spectrum from those with erotomania to those who do not believe their love is reciprocated. But the intimacy seeker insists, with delusional intensity of course, that they will win over their victim.
Number 4, the incompetent suitor.
The incompetent suitor who, despite the poor social or courting skills, has a fixation or in some cases a sense of entitlement to an intimate relationship with those who have attracted their amorous interest. Most of the incompetent suitor's victims are often already in a dating relationship with someone else.
Number 5, and the last, the predatory stalker.
The predatory stalker often spy on their victims in order to prepare, plan and attack, with their motives often being sexual in nature. In 2002, the National Victim Association Academy defined 2 additional forms of stalking called the vengeance stalker and the terrorist stalker, or sometimes known as the political stalker. Both the vengeance and the terrorist stalker do not, in contrast with some of the aforementioned types of stalkers, seek a personal relationship with their victims, but rather force them to emit a certain response. The motives for the vengeance stalker are to get even with another person whom they perceive as having done some wrong to them. For example, it may be an employee believes they have been fired without justification from a job by a superior member of staff. The political stalker, on the other hand, intends to accomplish a political agenda by using threats and intimidation to force the target to refrain or become involved in some particular activity regardless of the victim's consent. An example of this would be anti-abortionists who stalk doctors in an attempt to discourage them in their performance of any pregnancy termination. One of the uncertainties in understanding the origins of stalking is that the stalking concept is now widely understood in terms of a specific behaviour which are found to be either offensive or illegal. And not only that, but the personality characteristics that are often discussed as a preliminary behaviour to stalking may also produce behaviour that is not conventionally defined as stalking. Are you keeping up again?
Oh, yes.
Good. Because there is some research out there that suggests there is a spectrum of what might be called obsessed following behaviour. You see, there are some people out there who complain obsessively for years about a perceived wrong or wrongdoer when no one else can actually see it. And this person, who is the one who is complaining, cannot or will not let go of the person or place or who or what they perceive as the wrongdoer. So that in turn can lead to a wider group of persons that may be problematic in ways that seem similar to stalking. They may even get hospitalised, fired or let go if their behaviour is defined in terms of illegal stalking, with some of these people getting kicked out from their company or organisation. However, on the other side of the coin, many do good or even excellent work in their organisation and appear to have just one focus or a tenacious obsession. Although stalking is a gender-neutral behaviour, some studies have confirmed that the majority of victims are female and that the primary perpetrators are male. A January 2009 victim of a stalking report from the United States Department of Justice reported that the rate of stalking victimisation for females was approximately 2%, and for males it was approximately 0.7%. And as for the stalking perpetrators, many studies have shown that approximately 80 to 90% are male. After this second short break, in part 3, we will look at cyberstalking, the effect stalking has overall on its victims, and some of the problems law enforcement has trying to get a conviction.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07 852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk, or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
Many physical stalkers will use cyberstalking as another method of harassing their victims, with there being various attempts over the last few years by experts and legislators to define the term cyberstalking itself. In general, it is now understood to be the use of the internet or other electronic means to stalk or harass an individual, a group, or even an organisation. The term cyberstalking has often been referred to as another form of cyberbullying, with both terms referring to false accusations, defamation, slander, and even libel. Cyberstalking may also include monitoring, identity theft, threats, vandalism, solicitation for sex, or even gathering information that may be used to threaten or harass. Cyberstalking is often accompanied by real-time or offline stalking, with both, of course, being a criminal offence. I feel I should point out here that there is a distinction between cyberstalking and cyber trolling. Research has shown that trolling is usually perceived as a one-off comment, no matter how vile or hurtful it may be, whereas if it is part of a persistent campaign against one victim, then it can be considered stalking. On an interesting side note, cyberbullying, also known as cyber harassment or online bullying, is a form of bullying or harassment by the use of electronic means. It has become increasingly common, especially among teenagers and adolescents, due to young people's increased use of social media. Related issues include online harassment and the aforementioned trolling. In 2015, according to cyberbullying statistics from the iSafe Foundation, over half of the adolescents and teens had been bullied online, and about the same number had engaged in cyberbullying. Both the bully and the victim are negatively affected, and the intensity, duration and frequency of bullying are three aspects that increase the negative effects on them both. Cyberstalkers find their victims by using search engines, online forums, bulletin and discussion boards, chat rooms, and more recently through social networking sites like Facebook or Twitter. They may engage in live chat, harassment or flaming, or they may send electronic viruses and unsolicited emails. And in case you're an oldie like me, flaming, which is also known as roasting, is the act of posting insults which often include profanity or other offensive language on the internet. It has been reported that cyberstalkers may research individuals, which in turn makes their stalking more intense and, in order to feed their obsessions and curiosity, repeatedly instant message their victims. More commonly, they will post defamatory or derogatory statements and remarks about their stalking target. They do this mostly on web pages, message boards and in guest books in the hope that they get some sort of reaction or response from their victim, thereby initiating contact. And in some cases, cyberstalkers have been known to create fake blogs in the name of their victim, which then contain defamatory or pornographic content. When the cyberstalker is eventually prosecuted, many of them have unsuccessfully attempted to justify their behaviour based on their use of public forums, but once they do get a reaction from their victim online, they will typically attempt to track or follow the sufferer's internet activity. The classic cyberstalking behaviour, once they get an online reaction from their sufferer, includes the tracing of the victim's IP address in an attempt to verify their home or place of employment. An IP address, otherwise known as an Internet Protocol address, is a numerical label that is assigned to a device connected to a computer network that uses the Internet Protocol for communication. The IP addresses serve two main functions. One, the network interface identification, and two, the location address. Some cyber-stalking situations do evolve into physical stalking, and a victim may experience abusive and excessive phone calls, vandalism, threatening or obscene mail, trespassing, and physical assault. So, what are the general lifestyle effects as a consequence of being stalked? Well, apart from the constant mandatory emotion of fear and the possibility of injury due to an assault, research has shown that victims suffer from a wide range of psychological, physical and occupational lifestyle changes. And as with so many aspects of stalking, the experience and impact can vary greatly between the victims, who consider the stalker's behaviour as slightly annoying, to those victims who end up making a life-shattering change. There are, of course, other factors to consider when looking at the impact a stalker can have on their victim. For example, it may vary according to the victim's own characteristics, their past experiences, their current circumstances, and what they know or don't know about their stalker. And not only that, but it can also depend on how others respond to the victim's situation. For example, how the stalking is managed by authorities can also have an influence on the overall effect that the stalking episode has on its victim. Despite the complexities that may vary with each individual's experience and reaction to being stalked, research has demonstrated common patterns of response. And although female stalking victims usually report greater levels of fear, studies have shown that male victims who are subjected to a stalking experience show similar symptoms to those reported by their female counterparts. The list of mental health problems that stalking causes in both male and female victims is nearly endless, so I'm not going to go through the entire list, but the most common and all too often problems is that victims report are feelings of phobia, isolation, anxiety, depression and fear. They may also be unable to sleep, eat or carry out their day-to-day activities. And on top of all that, stalking victims may also experience panic attacks due to not knowing when the next stalking incident may occur, in addition to self-harm and or feeling suicidal. Getting a stalking conviction against a perpetrator is not an easy task. And just to give you one example of what I'm talking about. According to the BBC website from the 16th of March 2022, there were more than 7,000 reported stalking offences issued in Wales in the UK alone last year, meaning 2021. And out of that huge number, only 5 stalking protection orders were given. Again, from the same page of the BBC website, stalking victim Sarah Manship said she was, and I quote,
concerned about the message it's sending out.
I have listened to a lot of stalking victims over the years, both personally and through various podcasts and true crime shows, and a huge percentage of what I have listened to all seem to end up with the phrase that the justice system has let them, the victim, down. There's no doubt in my mind anyway that we do have a better understanding of how stalkers work these days, but we need to go further and stop these perpetrators using the justice system to make things worse for their victims. On a personal note, I myself was once a victim of stalking many years ago. But it was nothing compared to the pain and suffering most people have gone through, and, for me, it only lasted for about a year. And even though I say it was only a year, it was a year where my anxiety levels went up and my self-esteem went down. Never knowing what was going to happen next, and the feeling that my stalker could bump into me anywhere I went, phone me, follow me, or even turn up at my house uninvited, which they had done so many times already. It was such a dark year that I even thought to write a book about it, but it still leaves a bitter taste. So perhaps one day.
If you or someone you know has been a victim of stalking or harassment, you can report it to law enforcement or go to the National Stalking Helpline. We will leave a link to the National Stalking Helpline in the comments section of this podcast on all our social media sites. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 105, we are going to be looking at the disappearance of Brian Schaefer. Brian Randall Schaefer was an American medical student at the Ohio State University College of Medicine. On the night of the 31st of March in 2006, he went out with friends to celebrate the beginning of spring break. Later, he was separated from them, and they just assumed that he had gone home. However, a security camera outside the entrance to a Columbus bar recorded him briefly talking to two women just before 2 a.m. the next morning on the 1st of April, and then walking off-screen without any further evidence of him leaving the area. He has not been seen or heard from since.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. Pronunciations of the names of places though was all mine. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes, Denise Poolar and Tilly Treadwell from the Weird Walk Home podcast, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, and a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I will see what I can do. I'll also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by the basic copyright of Mark the Medium.